Here's an experiment for you. Take passionate experts in human resource technology. Invite cross-industry experts from inside and outside HR. Mix in what's happening in people analytics today. Give them the technology to connect. Hit record. Pour their discussions into a beaker. Mix thoroughly. And voila, you get the HR Data Labs podcast, where we explore the impact of data and analytics to your business. We may get passionate and even irreverent, but count on each episode challenging and enhancing your understanding of the way people data can be used to solve real-world problems. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I'm your host, David Turetsky. Today, we have a very special episode for you. Two interviews, the last two interviews actually, from the HR Tech 2022 series that we recorded at the HR Tech conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. The first is my friend, Neena Kovuru, and we're going to be talking to her about employer of choice and employee experience. And the second, Joe Kvidera, talking about AI and the world of HR and what's different in 2023. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy these last two interviews from the HR Tech 2022 conference.
Hi there, I'm Peter Zollman. I'm a co-host of the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast.
And I'm Stephen Rothberg, and I guess that makes me the other co-host.
Every other week, we're joined by guests from the world's leading job sites.
Together, we analyze news about general, niche, and aggregator job board and recruitment marketplaces sites.
Make sure you sign up and subscribe today.
We're still recording from the 2022 HR Technology Conference here in beautiful Mandalay Bay Conference Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. Today, I have with me my friend, Neena Kovuru. She has now taken on a new role at UKG as the VP of HR Strategy. Neena, welcome.
Thank you for having me on the show again. Always a pleasure.
It is our pleasure. Today, we're going to talk about something fun with Neena. But first, the one thing that no one knows about you, Neena.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to run out of these.
That's okay.
I do karaoke, Indian karaoke, to be specific.
Really?
Was part of this group.
It didn't take you very long to come up with that one, by the way.
No, but it's real. So
Okay.
I don't drink. I'm saying I don't drink anymore. No, I don't sing anymore. I haven't done it since the COVID started.
You're in Las Vegas. That would come across very disingenuous.
Maybe I should start drinking because I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
Well, you're having some water, so you're definitely drinking.
Yes, I am.
So Indian karaoke.
Indian karaoke. Absolutely
And you
love
enjoy it.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I sing all the peppy songs.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll hear you one of these days and we'll give you a critique, although I have no idea what you'd be singing.
If I get drunk, I can sing anything.
Oh, there you go. Well, maybe we'll see you later. So, Neena, today our topic is going to be employer of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk about a lot of different ways in which you've seen it,
Yes.
how it's impacted through your career,
Yeah.
and what you see the future of employer of choice.
Yes.
Let's dive in. So the first question is just easy. What is employer of choice?
So I think, employees, when they choose a particular employer over other employers, obviously, that becomes the employer of choice. But why do they choose that employer? It could be one particular reason, or it could be many. Meaning an employer could be your choice because either they are giving you innovation and you like that, or maybe they are giving you a remote work and you enjoy being in your home and being able to work, or they are offering certain benefits, or maybe they are offering all these packages and professional development that you think, this is a place where I can actually grow and they actually care about me. And that's why they become your employer of choice.
So, but employer of choice is a strategy. It's a way in which an organization believes that they can attract the right people and they can be what they're hoping they can have as experiential,
Yes.
The employee experience, EX, for the people that work there, right?
Yes. Yeah, they are turning it into a strategy. They are thinking like, how can we become an employer of choice, right? And what can we do so that we can separate ourselves in the market?
Right.
And that's, and that seems to be the way today, right? Everybody wants to be an employer of choice.
Yes. Yeah. And they're doing lots of things to make that impactful, like technology, like process,
Yes.
like the way in which they actually go to market.
Yes.
Even things to like that I talk about, pay transparency, pay equity,
Mm-hmm.
and how they're publicly talking about it, how they're advertising,
Yes.
all those things as well.
Of course. I mean, everything comes into play here. I mean, it just depends how you want to differentiate yourself from others. And
Right.
what do you want to stand up for? You know, what does my company believe in? What kind of talent do I want to retain? You know, that's the main focus here.
So let's change topics a little bit and
Okay.
go to what you think about the right way of becoming an employer of choice from an organization's perspective.
So I think, you know, like, first of all, you have to figure out why are you doing this, right? You're doing this because you want to attract a certain kind of talent to your organization, right? And so you have to gear yourself and decide, well, what kind of an employer of choice am I going to be? Because that is the kind of talent I would like to attract and retain. And also, I would like to say, if companies haven't looked at their values, mission, vision,
Right.
since pre-COVID, maybe it's time that they look at that, revise it if they need to, and see if they're still in the same direction. And then now you embark on deciding, okay, am I still looking for the same kind of talent or not? And lastly, I would say this because, having worked in many companies, I'll say, well, if you decide you want to be a certain kind of employer of choice, then make sure that you are not just doing this for show. You're not doing this because you want it on
Right.
your landing page.
Right.
Do it because you mean it, and make sure that every employee in your organization understands and actually follows through it.
And employees will call you on it too. Because if you go out and say,
Absolutely.
one thing on your on the website, especially when you're in your careers page, and then you don't live up to it, you're not only going to get people leave, but you're going to get people leave that are very vocal about it. And whether it's Glassdoor or LinkedIn or other places, call you out on it.
That's what I've noticed. And it's funny you say that because, in some of the organizations I've consulted and stuff, and I've always said this to them, like, you want to be employer of choice, you have to mean it. And some people don't listen. And in fact, they don't even go and answer on Glassdoor because if you look, they claim that they are an employer of choice, right? But you go on Glassdoor and look at that company's review and people are blasting them. And I actually asked this question and said, well, don't you think it's time that you go and answer them and give them? And they said, we don't want to get into feedback. We don't want to respond back.
Yeah. And I think it's the same issue on Glassdoor as it is in Yelp.
Mm-hmm.
That if you have employees who are upset, you respond to them. Just like on Yelp, if you have customers who are upset with you, you respond to them. And you basically give them a chance to talk to either an ombudsman or someone who can, or their HR person, or someone who can try and make sure that whatever problem they were having gets solved. Because it's not just going to be a problem for them, as you're saying, it's a problem for every employee.
One example I want to give. So, I recently started with UKG a couple of months ago.
Yep.
And, as soon as I started, I was set up for this orientation, which was 2 weeks after I had started. And I land in Boston and I'm down with COVID. and
That's why you didn't call me when you
I
came
know,
to
I
Boston.
didn't call you. So I'm out there and, I have a corporate card, right? And I can still order whatever I want and everything. But it was really nice. My boss basically texts me and I tell them, right, I have COVID. And she says to me, what do you need? What can we get you?
Right.
And
That's very nice.
and they actually delivered things for me that I asked from Walgreens. It was more because I was just exhausted.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I couldn't order things.
Right.
But they took care of me all through my stay in Boston. The corporate contacts me.
Yeah.
They send me these tests and they say, don't worry about work.
Yeah.
You can come back after 2 weeks. And I bring this up because, one of their tagline says, our purpose is people.
Yeah.
Right. And I truly, in all these years I've worked, I have never seen this anywhere. And I was really blown, it was like,
that's
wow.
really wonderful.
So, it's good that they believe in it. And, you become a company of choice now because you know that you're following through and every person in that organization is that way.
So let's follow up with some of the other organizations you worked for, because you work for nonprofits and governmental organizations. So what do you think being an employer of choice means in some of those other types of companies?
So in public sector, I think they have a bigger challenge up on their sleeve, I feel. Like, because, in olden days, I mean, I won't tell my age online, but, but, if you worked in public sector, you were guaranteed to have great benefits even after you retired. They would pay 100%, and you had great retirement and you had wonderful job.
Pension and all that stuff.
Yeah, pension. And you come in at 8, you leave at 5, don't have to worry about work. But that's not true anymore, right? Because, public sector, And even when I was working and, talking to all these companies, they're always comparing, even when they're comparing their pay scale, they're comparing themselves with other municipalities.
Yeah.
But if you're looking, the people are not going to other municipalities or cities. They are actually going
to corporates. Yeah.
Corporate.
Yeah.
So why are you not changing the way your pay scales is? Why are you not changing, even like simple discussions? Like I would say, hey, we need money, to use for rewards because people want to feel like they are appreciated.
Right.
And they said, well, that is taxpayers' money. We can't do that. But the taxpayers' money is now being used effectively because you have a productive workforce, an engaged workforce. So I think that public sector needs to be creative. And they need to start thinking differently because they cannot compete in this market like that.
No, they need to take the playbook from corporations and be able to say, if we're getting good performance, maybe we should incentivize those behaviors instead of, basically saying, well, that's your job. Do it anyways.
Right.
Doing a good job. Great. Pat on the back. No, you should be incentivizing those behaviors.
Like I have been still talking to some of the people who work in the public sector, where I was consulting and where I was working and consulting. And people tell me like, they're being overworked right now.
Yeah.
And one of the conversations one of them was sharing recently is that, they get comp time when they're working. And the manager basically talks to her and says like, don't record the comp time because, you are now taking advantage of the company by doing this. And she said, no, I'm not. This is a benefit that is being offered by the company. And you're asking me to work overtime. So, these are the things that your employee is not engaged anymore, right? Because now you're telling the employee that they shouldn't take comp time, but they have to work overtime. This is
it's
wrong.
Actually against the law.
It is against the law. No, it is against the law. I mean,
So,
but having these kinds of conversations is not right.
Right.
And you're discouraging your employees. And, now this person said, hey, I'm looking to leave because this is the kind of conversation I have with my manager and I'm working night and day.
Right.
So, people need to start thinking creatively. If you cannot increase pay, if you cannot give better benefits or deductibles or, your retirement is not great.
Right.
Think about something else.
So are DE&I, the diversity and inclusion efforts, going to help employers become an employer of choice?
It will help employers become employers of choice if they truly believe in diversity and inclusion. It's not going to be because if you just want to jump on the bandwagon that everyone's doing it. And there are companies who are not completely, into that and they are very successful. So, you have to figure out, is that going to be my value? Is that what I'm going to have to attract people?
Right.
And if you truly believe in it, then yes. And, if you look in the public sector, everybody almost has to have like diversity or, inclusion.
Yeah.
And what I have noticed is sometimes they'll say, oh, we have now a diversity and inclusion department that is now being headed. But is it really doing what it is supposed to do? Because a lot of times that area is actually working with employee relations to kind of work on the problems that employees have and solve those issues. But I think it's a bigger, you have to think in a bigger way, right? In a more holistic way and say, well, is the organization open to inclusion? Is the organization actually involving different people from different backgrounds, cultures, and mindsets? And I think that is greatly lacking. And, in public sector, when they say diversity, a lot of times they're running these reports.
Yes.
And they're saying what gender, what age, what race,
what ethnicity. Yeah.
And most of them are not in executive management.
No.
And even if they are, they don't have a say. And I know this. I have experienced this. So, make it real. Be authentic about it if you want to do it, because your employees, they know what you're doing. You can hide behind the department for 1 year, but afterwards the reality is going to be out there.
You mentioned something about the executive leadership not being diverse.
Yes.
There was a post on LinkedIn and someone said, what's the best measure of diversity in an organization? And I wasn't joking around when I said it's the picture of the boards of directors and the picture of the executive leadership team. And
I agree.
I went on to say the reason is because if I'm mirroring my organization and the executive leadership is made up of just old white men, then people are going to look to the top and go, well, that doesn't look like me, so I'm never going to be able to get there. And to me, the organizations that do it right integrate the board, integrate the executive leadership team. And I don't mean integrate for the forcing of integration.
Yes.
I mean, you're finding the right people who have the right skills and it doesn't matter who they are.
Exactly.
But it mirrors what your customer base is, and it mirrors what your employee base is. And so you find people that have the right skill, have the right understanding of the business, put them in the positions of leadership, and you're going to see a dramatic change in how people feel about the organization they're working for. You'll become more of an employer of choice. And this is going to get to a question in a second. You will. Because people feel like they're represented in the executive leadership team. I
think you are spot on because, even wherever I have worked, it's always been like a glass ceiling, right?
Yes.
And you see how I pursue certifications. I'm always constantly learning and doing things. But, knowing that you cannot be in that space just because of who you are is a struggle. Yeah. And very few organizations actually say, here's a pathway for you. We see potential in you. Let's see how we can help you grow. Because, as we were seeing in the conference yesterday by Ms. Marshall, everybody when you talk about equity, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody needs a different ladder to climb. Yeah. And, I may need something different in order to be successful in an organization. Right. Yeah. So you have to provide every person who is different, coming from different background, a different vehicle in order to be successful.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
I got to be honest with you. That's actually a great way of explaining it, because people always ask, how can I achieve the next level if my boss never leaves? But the answer isn't just going straight up a ladder. The answer might be taking different ladders.
Of course.
And so their path may need to be different, and we don't show them the path. And this is where I think transparency is going to help, is because transparency enables us to make better decisions about our careers and about our lives, because we can see which way we want to go, not which way you're telling me to go.
I completely agree. And that's another thing that's lacking in organizations is transparency. And even though it would come up in surveys, right, in organizations that I worked with and said, hey, there is an issue. People don't trust the management. They're like, well, the numbers are not right. The surveys, right. You haven't put the survey in the right fashion. No one wants to listen that there is a problem. And until you're ready. And, I was reading something and the person said, check your ego at the door as a leader, because as a leader, you have to be open to listening to what the problems are, because you are the one everyone's looking at.
Yes.
And in public sector, it's always top down. Whatever the leaders in the public sector are doing is how the employees and other people are going to behave and listen. So, you have to step up.
I think you just can drop the mic and walk away. I think that's exactly where we need to leave. So, Neena, we've talked about employer of choice. We've talked about the ways in which you can achieve employer of choice. And we've also talked about the benefits of DE&I to employer of choice. Is there anything else you wanted to cover before we close?
Just one thing. I think companies, they can achieve, great place to work designation that is out there that can solidify their claim to being, employer of choice. So that's a really cool place. They should check it out. There is independent questionnaires and surveys, and if they truly believe they're there.
Right.
If not, it can certainly show them what are the pitfalls and what's wrong.
I'd like to say that would be a good audit for companies to take. So even if they're not currently employer of choice, it'll show them where their deficiencies are.
Exactly.
And like you were talking about before, they need to check their ego at the door before they take it, because
they may be surprised.
Yeah, exactly. Neena, it's a pleasure as always to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on the show.
My pleasure. And hopefully we'll have you back again soon.
Thank you.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking subscribe. This podcast is made possible by Salary.com. Now, back to the show.
Today we have with us a fascinating guest, Joe Kvidera, who's with Lucy. Joe, tell us about yourself and tell us about what Lucy is.
Thanks. Joe Kvidera. I'm Lucy's Global VP of Sales and joined Lucy about 1.5 years ago. And really what Lucy is an answer engine for all of your unstructured enterprise data. So the best way to think about it is if you have data and PowerPoints, PDFs, Word documents, audio, video files,
right,
you can simply ask Lucy a question and she provides you directly to that answer.
She looks through all that unstructured stuff and constructs a structured answer.
She does, yes.
One that's conversational as well, correct?
Correct, to a point, yeah. So she will respond back in like Teams and Slack. So interact where the people are at and engaging today.
Yeah, we do a lot of our work in Teams, and I think that sometimes I don't get back from humans what I'm asking for structured. So, hopefully.
Yeah, typically we try to make sure Lucy responds in 4 to 6 seconds because your coworkers typically aren't always there. But if you take Lucy, tries to make sure you get an answer.
And by the way, I was kidding. I love the people I work with, and they definitely get back to me, but not necessarily within 4 to 6 seconds. So tell me one thing that no one knows about Joe.
Ooh, one thing that no one knows about Joe. No one or most people?
Well, because no one knows Lucy in the HR space, I think you can kind of just give us like something that not most people know about you.
Lost everything. Literally midway through my career, completely lost everything, personally and professionally, and started over. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me from a professional basis. You learn a lot when things are going well, but you learn a whole heck of a lot more when everything around you crumbles.
I've told people, and I tell especially people I'm mentoring, the best thing that could ever happen to you is failure.
100%.
Because you never know success until you know what it's like to fail. And I failed a lot in my lifetime. I'm working on my second divorce right now. I've been let go from jobs at various places in my life. Not necessarily because of my own doing, but you know, it's all, we have to all own it. Those are a really great one. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. So let's talk about our topic for today. Our topic for today is 2022. What surprised us? What surprised you? What you learned in 2022 about the world of HR and HR technology, if you'd like, and also then what your prediction is for 2023. But let's just start with 2022 in the world of 2022.
Yeah, for us, what we learned, in 2022, HR was a new market for us. And what we found in engaging in the market and between having the conferences that we've been at, as well as just engaging in the use cases with the HR teams, is the questions that they ask and are driving towards is really becoming less and less about what's important to the company versus more and more of what's important to the actual employees and the users. Right. How does this benefit them? How is this going to help them? Right. And it's a change that's not even just in the HR space, but just in general. Like, it's the first time in my career that I'm actually dealing with a market that people are actually asking about the end users of the technology and the employees that are part of that organization.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy about employees is that there's a lot of them.
There are.
And they all have different needs, and they all have different want, and they all are in different stages of their life. And when we try and broad brush the word employee as a unified thought, it's certainly not. There are employees who are executives, there are employees who are hourly workers, there are employees who are gig workers. And so the different needs across the entire organization, even outside the organization, like people who are candidates for jobs or interviewees, they're all different. They all have different needs.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what we've definitely found this year. And what's been interesting, though, is that they're focused on it. I mean, it's always, those needs have always been there. Yeah. But the fact that the conversations that we're having in the space and the HR specifically is that the conversation is focused around that, not just a checkbox, right?
So HR is founded on kind of the management of employees and being able to provide the right employee in the right place in the right time. We can't all blame hiring managers for hiring the wrong person. And so the HR organization's always kind of been that area of the company that's been focused on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But always, coming from my background, I've been in a lot of larger organizations as well as actually, starting and founding my own business. Even though that function is there for the employees, there's still that underlying, they're there because the company needs them to be there, and it's not, how do we really shift and make it about them versus about, just the company?
A lot of the conversations I've had recently with people, especially today, are HR functions becoming more of the business. Yep. And HR policies, HR programs, HR technologies being seen as business technologies, not just being seen as HR. You're coming from the business into HR. Yep. What's your perspective on that?
I agree 100%, right? I mean, it's really kind of becoming the core. A lot of the conversations that we've had, the past 12 plus months have been around how do we make that centric for them, right? Again, how does that become the base? And it's really not just there's all these point solutions everywhere that kind of do all these great things, but how do we wrap things into a cohesive movement forward so that it's, again, better for the employee engagement and their experience as an employee of the organization.
So let's talk a little bit about what you learned about data, because obviously in what you do, data is centric. And remember, we're not talking about Lucy in specific, but we're talking about in the world of conversational AI, the AI has to get trained on being able to get access to a whole bunch of data, and the data structured and unstructured. So what have you seen in terms of the challenges of bringing together all of that structured and unstructured data to be able to answer HR questions.
Yeah, the biggest challenge is there's no consistency.
Right.
And it's from one organization to the next and one department to the next and one leader to the next, things change.
Right.
So the challenge is, how do you take all that disparate data, to your point, both structured and unstructured? Obviously, structured is going to have a lot more consistency around it and formulation.
We hope.
Yeah, exactly. You can hope at least get query something and get a response.
Right.
If there's something in that field. But the unstructured, there's no consistent format, right? There's not, this is how you have to structure the employee manual. This is not how you have to structure their PTO policy or their medical benefits, and no one knows how to get that.
Right.
And all that data, historically, especially when you look at the AI side of it, is a lot of times still managed by a human behind it, trying to tag it and try to manually curate it and decide what needs to be done. And so there's some AI, but it's the challenge of how do you drive consistency when there is none?
One of the things that you just mentioned, which is kind of funny, especially around consistency, is you may have inside one company a plant, and then it has its own policies and procedures for how things get done. And then that maybe there's a worker who has worked at that plant, but then gets transferred to another plant. And so now the rules might be completely different. And thinking about that, how do you make sure that the rules that are served up to people and the policies that are served up to people are accurate? I mean, obviously we're a lot of indicative data, but remember, HR data trails sometimes. People don't put it in their transactions right away.
No, that's critical. I mean, the critical is getting, to your point, it's funny enough, we actually said the right answer to the right people at the right time.
Yeah.
And that's actually what we say at Lucy. And it goes hand in hand with what you just said there, is because that's so important for that and making sure that it's relevant to them.
Yeah.
And we had some conversations earlier today, international organization of, not only just between the US and the European market, but inside the European market. And now even more and more, like with California, with the CCPA, what other states are going to adopt that?
Yeah.
And how do you ensure that you're getting the answer to the person that's asking that question that's there? Because especially like when you look at like medical insurance and the policies, state by state, right? I mean, so many of these policies are different from state by state, let alone, plant to plant.
Well, it could also be town to town. I mean, there are some municipalities, and especially like cities, that have different rules for taxation and for working and for, disclosure of things, or breaks, even like in California, meal breaks and things like that. So there's so much difference there. It's almost like there needs to be this, I guess, Google on the back end to make sure, and actually I wouldn't, because everything on the internet is correct. We need to make sure that when someone asks a question, and maybe the answer sometimes that has to be given is, we'll get back to you, because maybe sometimes research needs to happen to actually get something to come back.
Yeah, no, right. I mean, getting back to you is sometimes maybe an answer that the company wants to provide because they want to make sure, but it's not what the employees want.
No, but if you're expected to give a really complex answer back in 4 to 6 seconds, then you need to have like everything. And as we're talking about, especially with the complexities that we're getting into around municipalities and their taxation or their meal break plans and whatnot, or their meal break rules, to parse all those things in 4 to 6 seconds is a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm not asking about your company's capability about it. I'm saying that, hopefully the right answer, especially when somebody talked to a consultant and they said, hey, do you know what the answer to this question is? And sometimes the answer has to be, no, I'll get back to you.
Exactly. You have to.
Yeah.
And that's just it. I mean, so you have to have if I don't have a good answer, check here for other potential options.
Now, when people use Siri and it doesn't know the answer, it usually brings up the web and it brings up the top 5 answers from Google or something. So hopefully conversational AI goes beyond that, because I've given presentations in the past where I've derided Siri and other chatbots that we use on a consumer basis. And we've been lulled to sleep, by the way, on the consumer side with chatbots giving us crappy I was going to use another word, but giving us crappy answers back to questions that should be pretty inane.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think you're being polite with your other answer that you're going to provide.
Yes,
there, so.
I try to be polite. We're not an explicit podcast, so I can't say exactly what I'd like to. Let's talk about things that didn't surprise you in 2022. What didn't surprise you?
What did not surprise us is the workforce being more and more disparate, less centralized, more and more organizations that are going away from physical offices. So the challenge is, how do people communicate? How do they, there's no more water cooler talk. You don't walk past HR's office for a quick 2-second conversation and say, hey, can you answer this for me? You have to block time on someone's calendar, but it's blocked from 8 to 5. So how do you get your answer?
Well, you try getting them on Zoom, but the Zoom has that little red circle with a white little line in it that says, don't bother me right now.
That's exactly it. I mean, so that didn't surprise us. I mean, that's continuing, right? I mean, I think and it's expanding more. I think we're seeing less and less of traditional return to office. So it's what people thought maybe there was a pause on what we had to do. I think that it's not. I mean, I think the pause is unpaused and it's continuing the flow.
Absolutely. Hey, are you listening to this and thinking to yourself, man, I wish I could talk to David about this? Well, you're in luck. We have a special offer for listeners of the HR Data Labs podcast, a free half-hour call with me about any of the topics we cover on the podcast or whatever is on your mind. Go to salary.com/HRDL consulting to schedule your free 30-minute call today. Let's talk a little bit. Let's turn and put on our prognostication hat and say, what would your predictions be for 2023?
I think it's going to exponentially increase, right? I think with the market that we have as a whole, there's some uncertainty, obviously, just in the generalized market that's ongoing. And I think with that, people are going to want to get as much certainty as they can. So I think we're going to continue to see that where they want to, work for themselves, the remote work, the work from anywhere. Yeah. I even tried to stop not using the work from home, right? It should be the work from anywhere. Like where is that? If you're on a boat with a hot spot in the middle of the ocean, but you got great Zoom coverage, and great. I mean, why does it matter what your background is?
Well, unless a 30-foot wave is coming at you, but
that would be bad. Yeah. That would be bad.
Yeah.
But we think it's going to continue to see that, right? The more and more disparate, and being able to try to tie the company culture to that, I think, is the challenge that I think a lot of organizations have. As companies kind of continue to disperse, how do you enforce that culture that a lot of these companies have taken years to build, or startups, how do you enforce that and build it when they're just starting?
Well, I think that's the reason why a lot of the command and control companies, and I mentioned before on the podcast, like Jamie Dimon saying that JP Morgan, we're going to work from the office because they don't want to give up that control. They haven't change the culture in their minds from the command and control, I see you, I know you're working, I can look over your shoulder, to the, let's work via Zoom, let's give you rules in which, you got to work from 9 to 5, you got to do this or that. I'll give you some flexibility, but don't mess around on that flexibility.
Well, I agreed. I think going into 23, there's going to be more and more of the worker demanding the flexibility, the worker being in control. When you talk about command and control, because in the market, right, just trying to hire people and find people is harder and harder. So the workers control more. And, just because I was having a conversation with my daughter, she did an internship, and they're like, it's remote because she's in California, the company's based in Atlanta. It's remote, but you have to be online at 6 a.m. and you have to have your camera on and you're done at 4. I'm like, that's not remote work. I mean, come on, let's be real here.
Well, it is, because they're not forcing her to be there. And they're allowing her to work from home. Yeah, and you're right. If you have to have the camera on the whole time, that's harsh.
That's very harsh.
Really harsh, especially if I have bad hair days all the time. Well, as my mom says, I have a face for radio. But, we don't necessarily, because that's a little intrusive.
Very.
And so she might want to test the boundaries of that.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that it goes back to, again, the control side of it, right? I think that we're going to continue to see the more employee control, but still demanding the capability to perform their job in a condensed time frame, right? That they can overachieve and be more efficient in the way that they are working and demanding the tools and the tool sets to do that.
I was talking to Chris Avila yesterday, who works at Oracle, and we were talking about results of a worker, not from a productivity standard or standpoint, but looking at it from the output perspective, measuring an employee on what they've produced, not how much they've produced, or not the quantity of production. And her thought process is that we change our metric and we come up with a new way of thinking about it. And I think what that'll help us do, especially in the future, is not worry about when you work or where you work, but that you actually got done what you're supposed to get done.
Exactly. And I think if you look at what the universities did over the past couple of years, where they had asynchronous education in the classes, and I think it's very much similar. I talk with my team about it. It's the output, not the input.
Exactly.
Right? If you can accomplish your goal and hit your numbers in a shorter time frame, it's about the output. And if the output, if they can do that in 2 hours, then maybe we need to look at the output in a different way that maybe wasn't right target.
Exactly.
But I agree. It should be the output of the results that we're trying to achieve, not what did it take for you to get there? Because every person's going to be different.
Absolutely.
And as long as we're measuring the same output, that's what we should be focused on.
Exactly. What? Any other predictions for 2023?
The Vikings will not win the Super Bowl. Coming from Minnesota.
Hey, listen.
I'm a realist.
They had just beaten the Packers. For context, because this is going to air a while from now.
They will not, though. I said will not. Right?
And listen, my Giants are undefeated right now. So
are the Vikings.
It's 1-0.
Yeah, so they will definitely, I'll put money on that. They will hold true. So I'm a realist Vikings fan.
There you go. Well, we're going to check that prediction, Joe, and I'm going to get back with you next year to see if that actually didn't happen or did happen.
Looking forward to it.
Joe, thank you very much. It was wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
And take care. And hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Likewise.
That was the HR Data Labs podcast. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you know anyone that might like to hear it, please send it their way. Thank you for joining us this week, and stay tuned for our next episode. Stay safe.